The first time Evelyn saw the boy, he was sitting alone in the far corner of the orphanage yard, staring at the dirt. He didn't look up when the other children laughed or ran past him. His clothes were clean but hung loosely from his frame. His hair was black, unkempt, and hung just above his eyes, which remained fixed on the same patch of ground. Evelyn felt a strange tug in her chest. Not pity, not sympathy, but something deeper. A connection she couldn't explain. She nudged her husband, Peter, and nodded toward the boy. "What about him?" she whispered. Peter followed her gaze and hesitated. "He looks withdrawn," he said. "Maybe even troubled. Or maybe just waiting for someone," she replied. That sentence would haunt her later. They had tried to have a child for years. Doctor after doctor, treatment after treatment. Each time, the hope rose, only to be crushed by another negative test or heart-wrenching call from the clinic. When Evelyn finally gave up on carrying a child, adoption felt like the natural next step. She and Peter had spent months visiting agencies, speaking with social workers, and going through interviews. Finally, they were approved and invited to visit the children's home. Most of the other kids had tried to catch their attention, smiling, waving, even approaching them with practiced charm. But this boy, whose file said his name was Eli, didn't even glance at them. He hadn't spoken a word since arriving 6 months earlier, the social worker explained. He'd been transferred from another facility after an incident they refused to discuss in detail. "There are behavioral concerns," she said carefully. "He's not violent, just unusual. But he's intelligent. Reads well above his age group. Doesn't speak, though, and he doesn't seem to bond with other children." Most families passed him over for exactly those reasons. Evelyn and Peter didn't. They brought him home 2 weeks later. The first days were quiet. Eli didn't speak, but he obeyed instructions, ate his food, and seemed to have no interest in toys, cartoons, or outings. He spent most of his time sitting by the window, drawing strange, dark shapes with a charcoal pencil in a sketchbook. Evelyn tried to engage him. She'd sit beside him, ask simple questions, show him books. He would glance at her, expressionless, and return to his drawings. At night, he never cried. He never made a sound. Just lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, until he eventually closed his eyes. Peter thought it was creepy. "He gives me the chills," he said one night. "I know we wanted to help, but what if something's wrong with him?" Evelyn didn't answer. She wasn't blind to Eli's strangeness, but there was something about him that pulled her in. Sometimes she felt like he was trying to speak without words, like he was screaming into a vacuum, but no one could hear. Then the noises began. It started with the sound of footsteps in the hallway at night. Evelyn would wake, thinking Peter was up, but he'd be beside her, fast asleep. When she checked on Eli, he'd be in bed, still and silent. Sometimes the footsteps were followed by whispers, low, urgent, unintelligible. Peter thought she was dreaming, until he heard them too. One morning, they found the living room in disarray. Couch cushions torn, books scattered, the TV screen cracked. Eli stood in the middle of it, clutching his sketchbook, his face blank. "Did you do this?" Peter demanded. Eli didn't respond. He handed the sketchbook to Evelyn and walked away. She opened it and gasped. The page showed a detailed sketch of their living room in chaos, exactly as it appeared now, down to the broken TV and torn pages on the floor. The drawing had been dated 2 days earlier. Peter was furious. "He's messing with us," he snapped. "We need to talk to someone." They brought in a child psychologist. Eli didn't speak to her either, but when she left his room after the session, she looked pale. "There's something off about this boy," she said. "Not just trauma. Something else. He doesn't respond like other children. And those drawings, he showed me one of my car, parked outside. Only it had a flat tire. I laughed it off until I went outside." Her face tightened. The tire was slashed. Peter wanted to return him. He argued for days. Evelyn refused. "He needs us," she insisted. "He's trying to tell us something." The breaking point came a week later. They woke in the middle of the night to the smell of smoke. Rushing downstairs, They found the kitchen in flames. Peter grabbed the extinguisher while Evelyn ran to Eli's room. He was standing in the hallway, watching silently. The sketchbook was in his hands. She pulled him close, but he didn't resist, didn't flinch. He just stared at the fire as if he had expected it. Once the fire was out, they sat in the living room, shaken. The fire chief said it looked accidental, a faulty outlet. But Evelyn wasn't convinced. She opened Eli's sketchbook. The newest page showed a burning kitchen, with two figures standing in the doorway. One of them was Eli. Peter left the next morning. Said he needed space. Said he couldn't live in a house where he felt like a guest in his own nightmare. Evelyn begged him to stay. He kissed her forehead and said, "You've already chosen." And it wasn't me. After he left, the house felt colder. Eli became more withdrawn, but his drawings became clearer, more detailed. They began showing not just scenes, but people. People Evelyn didn't know. A man with a scar across his jaw. A woman crying in a bathtub. A child holding a knife. One drawing caught her attention. A house in the woods, with a crooked chimney and twisted trees. The word home scrawled underneath. Something about it stirred a memory. She dug through Eli's file, found the name of the previous orphanage, and called them. They hesitated at first, but finally gave her the name of the facility he'd come from before that. An unlicensed group home shut down for abuse and neglect. One of the caretakers had vanished without explanation. The records were sealed. Evelyn drove to the address in the sketch. It was real. A boarded-up house deep in the woods, exactly as Eli had drawn it. The air felt heavy. She didn't go inside. Just stood there, heart pounding. She called the police, told them she suspected something. They dismissed her at first, but days later, news broke. 3 shallow graves were found behind the house. One of them contained the missing caretaker's remains. Another held the body of a young boy, never identified. Eli had never spoken a word, but he had shown them everything. After the discovery, things changed. A detective visited their home. He asked to speak to Eli. Evelyn brought him to the living room, and for the first time, Eli spoke. "He heard us," Eli said softly, "but he can't anymore." The detective asked who he was. Eli pointed to a drawing, one Evelyn hadn't seen before. It showed the caretaker, dead in the ground, eyes wide in terror. "He's still trying to get out," Eli whispered. The detective didn't know what to say. More drawings came, each one darker than the last. People no one recognized at first, until they matched them to missing persons cases. Somehow Eli knew. He didn't speak often, but when he did, it was always a warning. A prediction. A confession. Evelyn became protective. The press called him the silent seer. Investigators from around the country wanted to see the drawings. Psychics claimed he was gifted. Scientists wanted to study his brain. Evelyn refused them all. Then Peter came back. He'd been gone 3 months. He looked tired, thinner, but determined. He sat across from Evelyn and said, "I've been seeing a therapist. I wasn't ready for all this. But I want to help. I want to be part of this, whatever this is." Eli walked into the room. He stared at Peter, then handed him a drawing. Peter unfolded it. It was a sketch of himself, smiling, holding a baby. Evelyn sat beside him, tears in her eyes. "Is this our future?" Peter asked. Eli nodded. That night, he spoke again. "You saved me," he told Evelyn. "But he's still watching." She asked who. Eli just pointed to the mirror. And in the reflection, for a fraction of a second, Evelyn saw a man's face. Twisted, angry. Not Peter. Not Eli. Someone else. She turned around. No one was there. But the lights flickered, and the sketchbook flipped open to a new page, blank, except for the words, "It's not over."